case number WAO2021-001. It's Mousseau versus Allied Universal. And we're joined by Charles H. Mousseau, who is a former employee of Allied Universal. And we're going to give Mr. Mousseau platform right now. Mr. Mousseau, go ahead.
Okay, I work for Allied Universal in Pittsburgh, Nashville, and in the Denver metro area. I was a flex officer for them. I worked between the hospital setting, the malls, and the high-rise areas of the company. I had very little time off, 1 day off a week if possible, very little sleep, and very low pay. And they're scraping up all these companies. Steve Jones, the so-called CEO of Allied Universal, he is basically taking over every type of business that is in the security industry that he has no experience being in, and claiming it for himself. What he would do to these CEOs is that he would pay off these CEOs $25 million for him to take over their business while purchasing their other employees. And basically, he would be the new big boy on the block, the big bully on the block. As of now, with a G4S merger, there's 196 companies under Allied Universal's belt. And it is extremely serious. They are diving in from executive protection to maritime security to cyber security, and they now control about 85% of the security industry. It is a total nightmare. No one is allowed to bid, form new businesses. If you form a new business and start getting a contract over Allied and take over their business, they will buy you out automatically and take you over. Non-negotiable. It is horrible. They found that Allied Barton was originally in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Universal Protection Services was in California. Those two merged, and then Steve Jones took over, and now it's turning into a powerhouse. I mean, Allied Universal wants Securitas, Pinkerton, and every other business under the sun, including private military contractors. He's diving into. He's going to even attempt to go after Constellus Holdings, which holds Academy and Triple Canopy under them. So, and that is a defense contractor that he's going to actually try to acquire right now. Any questions so far?
Yes. There's a lot of information in that, I guess, initial entry that I have some questions about. So I guess just to start off, I would like to know just a little more about exactly what is your role? Because I mean, you briefly mentioned in the beginning, but what exactly is your role within, or was your role within that company?
My role was for them was a flex officer. I moved around from site to site. What other officers didn't show up or call off or quit, I was supposed to show up on site and take control of that entire shift or double shift. And I would basically get 1 day off a week.
Okay. And then how did you become preview, I guess, to all the information?
I was looking into them. They were just popping up on the news in January of this year, of like, Allied bought out this company, Allied took over this other company. And I'm like, you know what? Something doesn't smell right. Let me look into see on how many companies Allied has under them. And then they took over G4S. G4S has 93 companies underneath them. Allied Universal had about 95, 96, and then those two combined into one. And Allied Universal has a total of, just before the merger, they had 307 board members under them. And then with this G4S merger, they have a total of 600 plus board members with this G4S merger.
So Ally Universal at the moment has occupied the other big. So this is a
Conglomerate,
is
yes.
this so this is a
The other
cybersecurity.
massive security company, yes.
Okay, so it's a cybersecurity firm.
No, other private security firm,
Private security. Okay.
But he's acquired cybersecurity that's tied to defense contractors that he doesn't need to be in.
Okay. So, well, I guess like my first major question, specifically related to this topic and why the World Anti-Monopoly organization is interested in hearing what you have to say today. I guess my very first question would be, the World Anti-Monopoly organization look at monopolization as an entity that captures more than 30% of its state's market. How has Ally Universal monopolized in Pennsylvania market, in your opinion? Yes.
Okay, in Pennsylvania, whenever they acquired the G4S merger, they're running over 90% of that entire state's security, private security business contracts alone. Colorado, they're overseeing 85%. Tennessee, they're overseeing 75%. So it's really bad. I can't hear you.
Sorry. And then these percentages, how did you come across these percentages that made you worried? How was you aware of these percentages?
I was overhearing some talks within upper management, and they're overseeing every aspect, whether it's executive protection. I mean, the executive protection bodyguard side, they're overseeing 45% of that on a U.S. basis alone, and they have no experience being in the EP side, and they now control a brand new school in the Las Vegas area. The main executive protection schools are in Florida, Virginia, New Hampshire, and 2 in California. But this new one just popped up in Las Vegas, and it's not even accredited
yet. Yeah, that's very interesting. So I guess my second question would be, what upcoming mergers is Ally Universal planning in other states? I mean, you did mention, I think you mentioned Nevada, you mentioned Pennsylvania.
They are gonna go try and acquire Triple Canopy, which is a private military contractor based in North Carolina. And okay, they are gonna go after Securitas, which is another major player in the private security industry on a worldwide basis. Because Securitas has Stanley Security Solutions and Pinkerton underneath them, and Allied would just scrape them right up. And today I just spoke to one of the business development managers of Securitas, and they're not liking that one bit. They're probably going to be talking to their legal team over this potential hostile takeover, because Steve Jones just doesn't care on what he's going to acquire.
So how has community efficiency been affected as a result of these mergers? Meaning, have real income sorry, let me just finish the question.
Real income, for instance, whenever
yes.
Allied took over AS Solutions, the company, the AS Solutions based out of Seattle, Washington, that has major executive protection role in between California and Seattle. Basically, there was a major intelligence hub tied to that business entity, and those EP agents were making, and after Allied took over, they're making $31 an hour and working 2 weeks a month.
So from your perspective, I guess your initial concern became that as they continue to monopolize, it will ultimately hurt the employees, because they can now
Yes.
dictate more of the pay. Whereas if they were competition within that field, then they would want to raise their pay in order to compete for those employees in order to fill up those positions.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Right. I mean, when you got a father of family of say 3 or 4, how could an EP agent live off of $31 an hour and only work 40 hours a week, feed his kids and rent and work 2 weeks a month?
Yeah. Yeah.
That was my primary concern. That was my primary concern.
Yes. 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 Now that makes sense, because that was actually my initial, I guess, question for you was like, how did you come to be so involved, or what about this monopolization process caused you to become, I guess, an advocate against what they were doing, and it makes sense, specifically coming from an employee perspective that actually worked with them. You saw that as a threat not only to yourself but for your coworkers.
I saw it to the entire industry. I saw it to the entire industry, and I just decided to take action.
Okay. So I have one more question. How has corporate efficiency been affected when it comes to quality of training new security personnel?
With training, they're not even, they would do maybe 1, maybe 2 days of training. That's it. And then you would have to go and do this online stuff. Extremely horrible. I did not support it one bit. It's not all hands on, and there was no room for growth. I mean, with my previous experience, I wasn't even allowed to even put in for managers roles. I was denied 3 upper management roles within 6 months, maybe being in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I was denied those career opportunities. No one, just my manager above me denied my interviews for 3 separate sites I was trying to get into, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna go look for something else. I'm gonna go find something else that's gonna better for me, and that's what I'm gonna do. That's what I was doing. I mean,
So from
denying
your
those
sorry, so from your
denying those roles to me is not right.
yes. So I was
I did
gonna
not like it. I just did not appreciate being stepped on for being something that I'm qualified for to put in for. It just did not sit right with me.
So was there denial of, I guess, either giving you the positions in a specific locations that you were looking for was because of your pay specifically? They felt like they could just maybe hire someone who they would pay much less to fill in those positions at those various locations.
Yes, it would be that way. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
I mean, I was even put in for managers roles and I was getting denied the interview.
Yeah, I would say that's all the questions I have for you, unless Shota wants to, like, if he has anything to include within that.
Let's talk about community efficiency first. And how do you think real incomes have been affected as a result of this merger in Pennsylvania?
From this gigantic monopolized takeover? Horrible. Absolutely horrible. There is no way for anyone in my industry to make a good, honest living whatsoever. It's not right whatsoever. I mean, we're getting 4 days off a month and we're forced into overtime and we're not getting the proper pay scale that we should earn. And they're just wantonly taking over all of these companies and saying that, oh, I'm the big guy on the block. Here's less money for our employees. Meanwhile, the upper management gets to rake it all in, the account managers, the RVPs, the division vice president and the division presidents make all the extra and the business development managers get a $40,000 bonus per buyout on these mergers. And what's the other officers going to get?
It's interesting
Nothing.
what you're saying right now, because we've heard over and over that mergers usually benefit people who are in the management, CEOs, CFOs, people who run the companies. And we've seen over the past 40 years that mainly benefited people who are in charge, whether they're selling the company or whether they're buying the company. So antitrust authorities, unfortunately, they tend to look at corporate efficiencies only, if corporate efficiencies were affected as a result of a merger. And they have not been looking at community efficiencies. And you're clearly indicating that community efficiencies are essential for consumer welfare, because if the incomes decrease, then a city or a town or a state has less of an income to spend on education, to spend on healthcare, to spend on environmental protection. These are programs, directly funded by state and local governments. So that is a really concerning issue that you're mentioning, that again and again, it's mainly corporate managers that are benefiting from these transactions, and average workers are not. On top of that, consolidation in these markets also decreases, as you were saying, number of new entrants, right? Other security firms are disappearing, and these are the entities that are also paying in the budget of a city and state. And so we see that how negatively is affecting localities around the country. And you just mentioned more than 3 states already. It's been happening in Michigan.
Yeah, they got all. Yeah, Allied Universal has 100% control of Detroit. I have a asset in the Houston area right now, and an Allied Universal manager walked right up to his work site where he does casino security, and basically had walked up to him and said, "We're going to take over your company and every business in Houston, and no one has no say or control over it whatsoever. We're just going to take them all over, and everyone's going to be working for us."
Even corporate efficiency is affected. Corporate efficiency is usually based on productivity and innovation, but with just 2-day training, and you said that the level of training is not up.
Well, for instance, the executive protection bodyguard level, it's a week to a month, and you're getting this random course in the Vegas area that's not even accredited whatsoever, and they're just throwing it out there for their own gain, their own personal gain. I mean, you're talking a week to 2 weeks of driver technical driver training. Then you have your threat assessment alone, which would take a week. You have your firearms proficiency, would take at least 3 days. You would have your risk mitigation, the proper intelligence gathering. I mean, this is at least alone 6 weeks to 2 months of training just on the EP side, and they're doing it in under 3 days or 4 days.
Right, and only 2 days training again. When you've been
for the low level soft target training, yeah, like for instance, malls, warehouses, downtown high rises. You're only getting 2 days worth of training. That's it.
Now, what was the salary before? What was the range of salaries before change? Before they
flex officers, it's depending on the city. For instance, for the hospital side, you're getting anywhere between $20 to $23 an hour for the flex. You're getting cut down for Allied, it's around 16. In Denver, you're making around 15. In Nashville, you're doing around 15.
Okay.
So it's like, so we would say, what, that's like a 25% decrease?
Yep.
Was it higher before that?
It was when before these companies merged. Yeah, it was much higher. or before the takeovers took place.
What
Yeah.
was the amount?
From whenever I was in Dallas, the SOS security was doing $19.50 an hour before the takeover.
1950, you said?
$19.50 an hour before the takeover. Yeah,
So after the takeover, it went down to what? You said 15?
it went down. It went down to 15. Yeah.
Okay.
And you also mentioned IPOs that they're also trying to.
Yeah. Steve Jones wants to put Allied Universal as an IPO on the market right now. He's really looking into that.
And then you were mentioning a second merger with Securitas.
They want to oversee Securitas, control Pinkerton, and take over Stanley. Yes.
Okay.
So would that be, how would that acquisition work? Because some of these companies are already on the stock market. So how
They
would,
are, yes, they are. And Steve Jones doesn't care if they're on the market or not. Like how they took over G4X. Allied Universal is not on the stock market, and yet they took over a company that was on the stock market. And that should cause some red flags.
yeah.
Alone.
So I'm assuming once they took over which company you said it was that was in the stock market?
They took over G4S, which was on the stock market. Yes.
Okay, so G4X, for example, once they took over G4X, that was already, I guess, on the market. How did that, I guess, acquisition work? Does G4X now have to, I guess, re-enter as under a new management, or how does that process?
There's a lot of talk going on about that. I mean, I had a call up a couple days ago to see if I had to get my OC pepper spray certification for my new company that I got hired on down here in Nashville. I couldn't even get a hold of anyone. The offices for G4S on a worldwide scale are now completely shut down. For instance, U.S. Security Associates, their offices are now gone. SOS offices are now gone. I mean, whenever Allied takes over, these other offices are just randomly have to close up. And it's hard to tell with what's going to happen whenever they try to take forth with this IPO. I really have a hard time seeing Allied Universal and Steve Jones being on the market. I really do. I mean, there's a lot of negativity on Allied Universal online, whether it's on Indeed or Glassdoor or the Better Business Bureau. There's so much negativity on this company. The corruption runs amok so high that I can't even see these guys being on the market.
Mr. Mousseau, are you aware of any state antitrust authorities involved in this?
Right now, for the moment, Tennessee is looking into there is a case currently pending and going on in Tennessee right now. Yes.
What about?
Because I did bring it to their attention first.
What about any other states that you're aware of?
I do know that the Canadian authority is looking into them as of right now. This happened 4 days ago.
Canadian, and then what company in Canada are they trying to acquire?
They want all companies on a worldwide scale, not just the US. They want all companies under them. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Okay, so it looks like that we have an antitrust case, again, with consolidation in hand. And you're saying that both corporate and community efficiencies are affected as a result. Communities because real incomes have been cut, and corporate because there's no innovation at the company as well. So there are no trainings, quality decreased, the time.
Oh yeah, the training's horrible. The training is absolutely horrible.
All right, let me write. Would you like to add anything else to the hearing today?
Basically, with these takeovers, I mean, when you have a security company running close to 80-85% of the market and no one's looking at it, this is downright outcry disgraceful. They want total control of everything. Steve Jones and his other upper executives with Wendell Holdings, because Allied Universal is under Wendell Holdings. They want total control of everything, and they want no one to notice, well, I caught them on this. So now it's time to see what justice can be done and will be prevailed.
Well, thank you very much for participating today and for contributing to this hearing. Thank you, Jay.
Indeed, of course.
Thank you, Mr. Mousseau.
Sure.
We're going to share this record with the Department of Justice, and we're going to look into it. Thank you so much again, and have a good night.
Good night.